know about this doesn't matter. What they tell us doesn't matter. But there's a big difference between that and figuring this out for themselves. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers, presented by FanDuel. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates that I hope you'll also check out. Steelers versus Bears will be a 1:02 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff Sunday in Chicago. I'll be out there covering it, of course, and I'll have no expectations that I should know about anything in advance of this, up to and including, who the quarterback's going to be for the visitors. But they need to figure that out, and they need to figure that out today. There really weren't many clues about this yesterday. Rodgers was a limited participant in practice. That's how he was listed. Arthur Smith was the only one to speak to the matter, and this was the entirety of that.
Yeah, I think it's just like any situation. Been in these a few times, and that's why you always have to have contingency plans, and we'll see how the week unfolds. So that way, it's my job to be ready either way. We got in a similar situation last year, inverse with Russ and Justin week one, and that's our job to adapt just like you do. And that's what I give Mason a lot of credit. People talk about being a pro and job, but that's a sign of a real pro, because Mason does a good job preparing every week. You're always one play away. You always hear these hypotheticals, and he was ready to roll and did a really nice job.
So yeah, there's not really much there, but that's got to end today. And I'm going to repeat this for emphasis here. This isn't about me and you. This isn't about us satisfying our curiosity. This is about the team having the opportunity to go through their final full practice later this morning, and then their final walkthrough tomorrow, and then, everything else that goes into game day preparation, not least of which is proper mindset, proper focus, and not just for the quarterbacks, or depending on who's going to be decreed the starter, the quarterback singular. Everybody benefits from knowing who that guy is going to be. The offensive line benefits, the tight ends benefit, the wide receivers benefit. And this harkens back to something that I brought up at the beginning of the week. I know some of you got mad about this, thought I was trying to concoct some kind of drama or whatever. I couldn't care less, being candid here. We're talking about football on this program, and I'm going to talk about football. This is football. I see nothing that helps the Steelers in a scenario where they internally push this thing all the way back to, say, Sunday morning in Chicago. And if it hadn't been for Rodgers' richly documented recent history in New Jersey of pushing people within the team to exactly those kinds of brinks, I wouldn't even bring it up. But it's there. Go read about it. He'd have a hamstring injury, a knee injury, some other one that I can't even recall off the top of my head, all at the same time. But he'd be relentless in insisting on starting, and he was making some people's lives miserable in the process. Not me. New Jersey media. Go read it. Not like rumor rags or blogs or whatever either. These were actual journalistic outlets with editors and stuff. I'm not saying that's happened here. I am saying that some of the same types of vibes could easily have been gotten this week. Now, do I think that Rudolph should replace Rodgers as some, permanent starter or whatever? I'm not even coming within a zillion miles of that. That's not what this is about. I'm not an idiot. If Rodgers is going to be healthy, Rodgers is going to play. I've said that since day one, since the day he was signed. What I'm talking about here is winning a football game in Chicago. That's it. Winning a football game in Chicago. And I can't be convinced that the guy with the busted wrist, who's already had a month of lousy play, in large part because he was avoiding contact, somehow makes for a better option than the guy we just watched win a game in relief just a handful of days ago. That makes no sense to me. And it shouldn't make any sense to anybody. just continuing to call things as I see them. Mike Tomlin does have a history of being starstruck. He very, very much does have a history of bending over for the star quarterback. When Ben was in that building, Ben basically ran that building, at least as it came down to one position. If it seems unfair that I'm getting preemptive, okay, fine, so be it. We have another program at 4 o'clock today. If we find out that they're going with Rudolph, I'll eat the words, and I'll do so gleefully, because I believe that decision will have been made for the right reasons. Put the healthiest quarterback out there, protect your starting quarterback for the longer-term future by not allowing him to exacerbate an existing injury, a fracture, and win the game. That's it. Just those things. No drama, no narratives. Just win the game. And don't let anybody's reputations or stardom or anything else get in the way. When we come back, J1Q.
Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Football season's finally here. Time to check out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Think the Steelers are headed to the Super Bowl? Lock in your bets today. Whatever your game, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on all the action. Today's J1Q comes from Pat Grimes in Michigan, who says, DK, can we give the Steelers some credit if they beat the Bears? A win over the Bears would give the Steelers 3 wins over division leaders, including the Colts and Patriots, and 2 of those wins would have been on the road. I have a standard answer for these kinds of things. And it's not going to be one that you're going to like. And it's really that it doesn't matter. It's almost Thanksgiving week. The Steelers are in first place. The Steelers have gotten there through some pretty good wins. They've gotten there through some pretty lousy losses. And the Bears, as I'm sure is going to get repeated a gazillion times all week long, have yet to beat anybody that currently has a winning record. Rattling off their victories in order, they've beaten the Cowboys, they've beaten the Raiders, they've beaten the Commanders. All of these were pretty tight games, too. The last 2 that I mentioned were 1-pointers. They beat the Saints. They beat the Bengals 47-42, as you might have imagined. They beat the Giants by 4. They beat the Vikings by 2. And what are you going to do? Try to discredit them over that? They're 7-3. They're 7-3, and they're the Bears. This is a double whammy. They have a lot to overcome just by being who they are. But I want to throw this at you, too, because I think this is the sort of level at which this needs to be discussed. The Bears have the number 4 offense in the entire league. Against all crappy teams, sure, whatever, but this is all you have. Number 4, they average 373.8 yards per game. A lot of that's Caleb Williams. Now, has he been great? No. Has he been pretty good for a still really young guy? Sure he has. But it's the running that's really stood out. The Bears are second in the NFL, averaging 146.6 yards per game, and they haven't done that with just one guy. DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai each have averaged 4.7 yards per carry. That's a pretty nice figure. Swift with 634, his partner with 413. Williams himself has 272 yards, so he can get out of there. The defense doesn't necessarily floor you either. In fact, when it comes to total defense, they're barely a notch above the Steelers, who rank 28th. The Bears are 27th. But, and Pittsburgh is the wrong place to downplay this, the Bears lead the entire league in turnover differential at plus 16. That's 6 better than the next highest team. That's really, really good. And to be more specific, they've got 22 takeaways. That's also number 1 in the NFL. That's 4 more than the Steelers, who are tied for second. 15 picks and 7 fumble recoveries. So is it a good win? Yeah, of course it's a good win. But I'm going to say it again. It's just a good win, bad win. Get better. Keep getting better. I'm never going to stop emphasizing that, because the end goal for this team, as it's constituted, not because of my expectations, should be winning it all. But at the same time, go ahead and win the game that's right in front of you. And if you're asking, like, what would I think if they played badly and pulled one out or whatever? It's the NFL. This is happening everywhere. There's parity in every direction, every game, every week. There's not a team in the league that has fewer than 2 losses, and there are 5 teams that have exactly 2 losses. Even the Titans have won a game. Even the New Jersey teams have won 2 each. The Browns have a couple of wins. We probably really need to advance as a football society past the point where we're assessing what's a good win and what isn't. Just throwing that out there. Appreciate you teeing that up for me, Pat. And again, we're going to have a double shot of Steelers at 4 p.m. today that just might be a pretty eventful episode, given what could come of today's practice and follow-up session on the South Side. Thanks to everybody for being here. Hope to see you there.